Hello! Hi friends! Welcome to Independent Clothing Initiative, a sewing channel. I'm Jill Haggerty and I am so happy that you're here with me today. Today we're going to cover how to read and understand your sewing pattern to ensure success. Let's start with talking a little bit about pattern development. Pattern development happens in 3 ways. 1, draping, 2, drafting, and 3, flat pattern making. Number 1, drafting a pattern is based on body measurements. Drafting a pattern can occur by following strict drafting rules, or those rules can also be put aside. An example, making a shirt from an existing shirt as seen here. Drafting is often computer generated with drafting software. Draping is another form of pattern making. Draping is usually done on a dress form. Fabric is laid across the dress form, pinned into place, and pattern pieces are made that way. This particular pattern here was not made on the dress form. It is flat pattern making, and I will link it in the description box below. But draping is a great choice dependent on what kind of fabric you're using and what the overall look and style is that you want in the end. Have you ever heard of working patterns, slopes, or blocks? Those are all used to make flat patterns. Flat pattern making uses a set group of measurements as a base for every pattern. Flat pattern making is used by ready-to-wear and patterns that we use in stores and find in our indie sewing community. Let's chat patterns. When you are looking for that perfect garment, there are so many options out there. There are so many ways to approach sewing even one simple garment. These patterns here are commercial patterns such as New Look, Simplicity, Butternick, and Vogue. These are great patterns that you can find in any chain type sewing store. Then there are indie patterns. Over the last several years, it has been so exciting to watch more and more pop up. You can often buy indie sewing patterns in paper form or online as a PDF. In paper form, they come and look a lot like the commercial patterns. True Bias, Salida skirt, and Ash jeans, right? By Megan Nielsen. If you buy an indie sewing pattern as a PDF, you can store them in different folders on your computer, which is the way that I usually do it. But every so often, a tried and true pattern I will print out. I store my indie sewing patterns in these big envelopes in my sewing room and put those in a filing cabinet. I will also link the video that shows how I store my patterns below. This one is printed out so that we can go over it together in detail, what is found within an indie sewing pattern and what might be different between an indie sewing pattern and a commercial sewing pattern. Let's dive in. Let's start with commercial sewing patterns. On commercial sewing patterns, you can often find things such as a difficulty rating. Not all patterns have this, but if you are a beginner especially, this is a great thing to look for. You can also find the size recommendations for that pattern. This one not only has the sizes up here included in this pattern, but it also has cup sizes. This way, you know if you are not in this range of cup sizes, an adjustment will need to be made. The front of a envelope usually includes a photograph of the pattern as well as fashion illustrations showing the different views that are included within this pattern. Any one of these views can be made upon purchasing this pattern. Of course, you can always add your own hack, which is something that I love to do. Really make it my own. The back of an envelope will have more technical line drawings. These line drawings will show you style lines and different elements such as darts, sleeves, belts, zippers. The line drawings really help you get a quick overview of what the construction of the garment will look like. The back also usually includes a descriptive paragraph telling us a little bit more about the pattern. It then will go on and give us a notions list. What is required for this specific pattern and for the different sizes. A fabric suggestion or recommendation list is also included. Many times I have made patterns successfully not using the recommended fabric, but I have also made patterns unsuccessfully when I have disregarded this here. It's a good idea if you're starting out and don't know a lot about fabrics to follow the guidelines under the fabric recommendations. A basic size chart will be included. This will help you know what range you fall in. Oftentimes you might fall in more than one range with these different measurements here. And in a separate video, we will talk about measuring our bodies and choosing which size pattern will fit you best. Are you guys looking forward to that? Within the pattern, both commercial and indie, you will be able to find a guide sheet. This guide sheet will provide greater detail of what we saw on the outside of the envelope, including a list of pattern pieces, a key to reading the instructions, how to lay your pattern pieces for cutting, as well as your interfacing, and then of course step-by-step instructions on how to sew the pattern. Why are finished garment measurements often put on the back of these envelopes? Finished garment measurements help you to understand how much ease is in a garment and where the length might fall on you. A yardage chart is also included here for the different views and the different fabrics that will be included within this pattern. That way you can take your envelope to the store and easily see how much fabric you're going to need for your project. So much good information, right? Let's talk indie sewing patterns. You guys, I love and use both commercial and indie sewing patterns. I find that indie patterns tend to go into greater detail than commercial patterns. This is one of the reasons that I recommend them to especially beginners. Over the years, as I have dove deeper and deeper into sewing, I have appreciated how indie sewing patterns have seemed to hold my hand as I experience different techniques for the first time. Here is an example. This is from the Panama Tee Shirt and Dress by Alina Sewing and Design Company. After she gives you all the same information that you would find in a commercial sewing pattern envelope, she also adds things such as sewing with knits. She includes details such as what needle to choose, what stitches work best, and how to hem knits. I still remember the first time that I was asked to sew a bar tack. I looked it up, I read a bunch of different information, I read you're supposed to press a bar tack button on your machine. My machine was so simple it didn't have something like that. I didn't exactly know what to do. I did sew several bar tacks and they were all different sizes. None of them quite turned out right, and I just had the feeling that I was doing it wrong. Fast forward to indie sewing patterns. Now, information such as that, how exactly to sew a bar tack when a bar tack is called for, can be and oftentimes is included right in the pattern. A little tip, now it is easier to learn to sew than ever. There is so much good information online. There is also an amazing sewing community that you can reach out to, and oftentimes on Facebook, under the different indie sewing pattern makers, they have a group that you can go in there directly and ask questions to other people that are sewing the exact same patterns that you are. That's it! I hope that this information is helpful for... If you have any comments or questions about the things that we talked about today, or would like any more information regarding reading patterns and understanding them better to create greater success and a greater end result, please feel free to write a comment and leave it in the comment section below. And while you're at it, like and subscribe. Did you really think you would get through a whole video at Independent Clothing Initiative without a quote? Honor the space between no longer and not yet. As you continue to learn and grow throughout your sewing journey, you might not quite be where you want to be yet. Be patient, you'll get there. And with confidence, I tell you that if you can follow a recipe, if you can follow directions, a manual of any kind, you can sew. I know you can do it. Thank you for joining me today at Independent Clothing Initiative, a sewing channel. I'm Jill Haggerty, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!